Hi guys, my name is Matt Brown and I'm proudly hosting the Tap Into the Future with Halo series, proudly brought to you by Halo. With me in the studio today is Pierre Orell and Tom Wells. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Matt. How's it, Matt?
Okay, cool. So maybe let's start with you, Pierre. So for our viewers and audience around the world who potentially haven't heard of Halo, they're like, are you guys part of Xbox? Obviously you're not. But help us demystify exactly, who is Halo? What are you guys trying to do? Give us the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so Halo is a payment technology that allows you to turn your phone into a card acceptance device. So instead of using some separate pin and a chip and pin device to make a card payment, you can do it all on your Android phone, right? And essentially, it's a startup that's been incubated within Synthesis, a large software company within South Africa. And obviously, I lead a team of very smart guys that are building this app.
Like Tom,
yeah. Tom's been working on some of the stuff for many years and knows it well. But yeah, we've got a whole team of passionate people building out the software and trying to change the future of payments.
Why does the future of payments need to change? Like, what is if you were to surmise from your point of view, exactly why this matters so much? Could you maybe give us what that looks like for you?
Yeah, sure. So we've been tracking the payments ecosystem for many years, and we're very close to the card industry. So that's the credit card industry. It's the accepting of credit card payments and the making of payments from the consumer side. So what we've seen, and I think we've all seen this around about the sort of early 2010s, 2014, I think Apple launched Apple Pay, and it was really the first big example of the first time we saw the dematerialization of the credit card now into a digital form. And so I think we'd all agree we probably all generally are quite comfortable with using Apple Pay or Samsung Pay or Fitbit Pay or Garmin Pay, which are these digital representations of the payment card on the consumer side. What we're seeing now, and we're starting to see the doors opening around the opposite side of that, the accepting side of that equation. So now today you can tap your card, but you're generally tapping onto either the Woolies terminal or the Pick and Pay terminal or the Yoko terminal or wherever it is that you're paying. On the merchant side, we now are seeing the ability with something like Halo to dematerialize the merchant side. So that means on the acceptance side, we can just accept that payment from an app. So we could use a credit card to tap onto a phone on the receiving side of that payment. And we think that this is something that brings the world together from a paying and accepting payment perspective. It has completely digitized the world of payments, and it allows us to remove the hardware constraint that we've been stuck with.
So it sounds like magic to me. I don't know what you guys think. This dematerialization of payments. So what is this exactly, Tom? Is this magic?
No, it's not really magic. I mean, fundamentally, it is just software that runs within the constraints of an app on a mobile device. I think and so that makes sense. You can really build whatever those hardware terminals were doing, for the last 20 or 30 years. You can reproduce that functionality in software. The biggest constraint that is being removed, though, is the acceptability of this by the big card schemes. So Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Diners, etc., are becoming more and more comfortable with the ability that this functionality can happen in software and is no longer mandated to happen in hardware. And so we're taking advantage of that constraint being slowly removed.
So it is magic.
Yeah, it's magic.
So if I could bring Pierre back into the conversation. So Pierre, I'm actually going to ask you to get your phone out and give us a demo conceptually in a moment. But I think what I'm hearing is it's really the dematerialization of hardware. So to your point around, paying with actual plastic, which we've been, familiar with now for I don't know, a long time. And now this is all about it becoming, software. So it's the idea, I suppose, of like software eating the world, right? Only now you guys are leading the kind of forefront of this dematerialization of hardware space. Is that correct? What do you think, Pierre?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, on multiple fronts, we're changing that hardware piece.
Show us exactly how this works.
Great. So you would enter an amount. Here I've entered 50 Rand. Click next. Continue. Say pay by card. And now this is prompting me to pay with the card. I tap on the back. There's a small vibration. This is now going online to the bank to get the approval. And there you see the MasterCard approval symbol. So that transaction is processed successfully, prompts me to send a receipt.
Amazing.
Great.
Easy as. So that's very interesting. So we spoke a lot about Apple Pay. Does Halo work with Apple Pay? Can you show us how that actually works in the real world?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I showed you before, card's ready to accept a payment.
I've loaded up my Apple Pay card.
There we go. It's read the card now. It's going online to process the payment.
Huh.
And there we go.
So, Pierre, just for my information, I'm sure some of the our viewers and listeners around the world are kind of wondering, well, we know about, cryptocurrencies, decentralized finance, like the whole payment space seems, in my experience, it's just like it's changing. It's changing really quickly. We are talking about the future. So I'd love to maybe get your view on, what does the future of payments look like? Tom mentioned, walking into Woolworths or Pick and Pay, so to speak. Some of us using Apple Pay, not everybody. But from your perspective, in the context of Halo, what does the future actually look like?
I mean, it's a great question, and I guess there are many angles to it. But essentially, cards are ubiquitous today, right? Everybody's familiar with cards. They've been in circulation for many, many years, in fact, decades. So we're all comfortable with the concept of having this piece of plastic or virtual equivalent and making payments with that, right? But those are just really the on-ramps and off-ramps to a bigger payments ecosystem. So if you think about crypto, you've got to get your real cash somehow into that equation, right? How do you cash in and buy Bitcoin? So we see Halo being a vehicle to obviously use card payments to get onto other platforms. So you could tap on your phone to recharge your wallet. That could be a crypto wallet, and now you can start purchasing other types of cryptocurrencies. You can use it to top up and buy Forex. You could use it to tap to purchase on Takealot or some other online retailer. So we really see it as a mechanism as getting you onto something or effectively cashing out at some point as well to your card account. So that's the future. We see it really as that mechanism. That's the on-ramps and off-ramps. We don't see limits because obviously everybody's comfortable using cards. And if they become virtual cards, that's great. We geared up for that as well.
Mm-hmm. So who is this actually for then? So obviously in the first episode, we discussed, how much of a problem hardware-based transactions are and things like that. Now we're kind of getting into the product space. So who is this actually for? I mean, is this for Matt Brown, Group CEO, or is this for, a retailer only? Is it, Pierre, the crypto investor? Who is this? Who is the product, the Halo product actually for?
Yeah, so I think today, when we look at who is Halo for today, we absolutely say yes, it's the small merchants. That's where it makes the most sense. However, we definitely see when we set off on this journey, we were looking for a piece of technology that would not just dematerialize. I mean, dematerialization is actually just one of the first steps towards democratization, right? Mm. We're actually searching for the democratization of payments, which really, if you fundamentally think about it, it's peer-to-peer. We're really looking for something which is going to replace or be the new future peer-to-peer payment thing, which means that there's no, and peer-to-peer means that it's not important that there's a consumer and a merchant anymore. It's just people transacting with people, right? And whether they are merchants or they work at a pizza shop or they're accepting a payment because they've sold you a pair of their secondhand shoes, it doesn't really matter in a peer-to-peer way. And so we believe, quite strongly believe, that when we set off on technology around peer-to-peer payments, we looked at a lot of different options around what could be the network. And we're absolutely sure that the card network really is the only one you can build this on at a global level. It really is the only compatible payments method that works between countries, between individuals, across the world pretty ubiquitously, whether it's e-commerce or whether it's in-store. Card is really the only thing that works perfectly, works really well. And so we believe something like Halo, with the dematerialization on the acceptance side, is kind of the last step before the opening and the democratization of payments peer-to-peer. So we start with merchants today, but we believe that once this becomes more ubiquitous and people are more comfortable with the idea of it, that it opens up a very, very long tail of many other use cases where people are accepting payment or accepting money from other people and they're not necessarily merchants. if that
I
makes
see.
sense.
So that's what I understand when you say the word dematerialize. It means I can use Halo to send money to you and vice versa. So that's kind of what you guys are trying to enable long term, right?
Yes, exactly right.
All right, fantastic. Thanks for that, Tom. It helps me understand where you guys are going. Pierre, if I could bring you back into the conversation, you're obviously Mr. Product there at Halo. So what are the three things that actually makes all of this possible? Because it sounds to me like this is a pretty innovative, disruptive payment solution or technology. But maybe if you could help our audience around the world just understand, how does this actually work exactly? How does it, what is required to make this happen?
Fundamentally, we've touched on the security aspects, and you've got to understand encryption and how this card ecosystem works, right? It's really secure. You don't hear of much card fraud, happening on physical devices, right? It's only when people card skim and things like that. So, at its core, the card infrastructure is highly secure, right? So we've learned how to tap into that, build secure applications that replicate what we would have seen in hardware. And then you also go through a series of reviews. You can't just publish an app to the App Store and start accepting payment. We've had to put the app through independent labs who basically do a code review. They try and do penetration testing on the app. They try and tear it apart, basically, from a security aspect. And so we've done that with a lab in the Netherlands, and they really review your app. And that report then gets submitted to each individual card scheme, Visa, MasterCard, American Express. And their InfoSec teams then evaluate your application. So they make sure your software is secure. So you can't just build an app and launch it to market. There are these massive barriers to get through, and they call it certifications, right? So you've got to perform multiple certifications. So we've certified the payment kernel. That's the little NFC piece that's communicating with the card. That's an L2 certification. The application then gets tested and certified against the card networks. That's an L3 certification. And all these security reviews. So, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, essentially, to work through these independent labs and get that assurance that your product's good before you can take it to market. So there are significant barriers.
Question from my side. How long did that certification process actually take? I know you mentioned it's expensive, but how long? Because, you're dealing with regulators, right? So how long did this process actually take you?
Yeah, so I think they're stage gates. So the first certification, that L2, took 6 months, so it wasn't a quick overnight thing. And then the further certifications took about 4 months after that. So, at best, you're working, after you've got a workable product, you're spending a year certifying and accrediting that product.
Cool. So the bottom line here is Halo is certified.
It is, yes.
Fantastic. What is misunderstood about this space? Because, if you talk about words like, Tom, if you talk about words like you mentioned, dematerialized, democratized, all Peter Diamandis, fourth industrial revolution stuff. And, these are terms that have been around in the kind of business space for some time. And yet, as the ordinary business person, being the layman here, not knowing what you guys know, for me, it's a very intangible outcome. Right. So what is misunderstood about soft POS or ePOS or digital point of sale solutions like Halo?
Yeah. So I think essentially what people don't see is what's operating under the hood inside that app. Right. And it's really about securing the data. So how do you secure that payment in a way that is as good as what was happening in hardware? So previously, if you think of your Ingenico or Verifone devices that you're tapping on or inserting your card into today, those are all hardware-based devices that protect encryption keys. So before that device ships to a shop or a merchant, there are special encryption keys that have been embedded in there, right? So imagine that's the key to the vault, right? So the key is protected. So your data will be protected inside a vault, and there's one key, and that key is baked into that hardware. No one can manipulate it, no one can extract it or change it. Now you're in software, and I've just said that app builders can do anything in software, right? So how do you protect those keys that then encrypt the data in such a way that hackers or malicious actors can break into that app, steal the keys, and then start exfiltrating data? And this is sensitive data, right? It's card information. So if you can extract thousands of credit card information, imagine the fraud that can be conducted. So really what you don't see is all the security and the new technologies that are embedded into this app to prevent fraud, to secure that payment.
All right. So that sounds really interesting. What I would love to maybe get is like, could you paint a picture of like who's actually using this technology? You know, because if you think about blockchain and cryptocurrency, for instance, it's like, well, we all know not everybody is using it. Some of us are like day trading or whatever, but you know, most of the world is not actually in the crypto space whatsoever. So in the real world, talking about the product, we've established that it's magic. Thank you, Tom. And Pierre, you've obviously explained, you know, what's required to get this magic to actually be not magic, but actually something that's tangible. Who is using Halo at a high level? And what are some of the intended outcomes that you guys have seen as a direct consequence of, you know, the market using your technology?
So, I mean, where it sits today is it's really about small businesses being able to displace cash and accept card payment. So a lot of small business owners, if you think of nail salons, hairdressers, etc., often are cash heavy, right? And I think driven by the rise of contactless payments, everybody loves paying with a tap. You know, they've been pushed almost by their consumers to actually start accepting card payments. And there may have been barriers previously where it was expensive to get a device or the device just didn't operate in their environment, but they've all had cell phones in their pockets, right? So now we're enabling those small businesses to accept these card payments. So that's where it's operating today. So there are a few thousand merchants that have access to this and are displacing cash on a daily basis. I think that's essentially where we are today.
Where are we going here? I mean, obviously, you're quite the visionary, quite clearly for me at least. So what's coming up next? We know where we are today. What's coming up next from your perspective?
Yeah, I think it's pretty hard to predict, actually. So one of the very exciting things about Halo is that people can turn themselves into accepting payments completely digitally and completely remotely. So someone can download the Halo app or the Nedbank Pocket Pass or whatever it is that is powered by Halo, sign up completely remotely without having to go to a shop and purchase a device, and within a few minutes start to accept payments on that device. So I think with just that sort of feature set, we can already start to imagine use cases. So potentially people who are further away from cities, maybe in more rural areas where there's certainly data connectivity, but maybe not a lot of commerce on the ground, to be able to get a mobile POS, like a Yoko device, for example. And so I think that there's a whole lot of use cases that we just actually are not that sure of just yet. I think there's also a whole lot of consumer education. I don't think the market is yet ready to start tapping their cards on other people's devices. This was like in the early days of Apple Pay. It was quite strange, and people are, why are you tapping your phone on my device? Does that work? And I think over time, quite quickly, we started to become comfortable with that notion. Halo's in this place today where it's magical technology, but not a lot of people understand it and have the faith that it works in the way the old system works. So I think we've still got a way to go from an education perspective. And then I think a whole lot of new use cases to be unlocked as people start to discover themselves how they can make use of it.
Yeah. One of the things I've been quite struck by, you know, speaking about Apple Pay, for instance, is how accepted it is in the retail space in general. And it happened literally overnight. So I'm like, and there's not even an eyebrow that gets raised. It's just like, cool.
Exactly.
Here, there's the moment you take out your phone, right? They're like, cool, here's the payment terminal. And it happened literally like overnight. So I'm fascinated to look into the future. When you stop and you fast forward out and you put your kind of like, you know, Halo business out into the future, do you foresee a situation where, you know, you mentioned that people were like, hey, are you putting my phone on your merchant hardware terminal? Do you feel that there's ever going to be a situation where our phones could literally tap, like as in I can just do it directly with you?
Yes, definitely. And Pierre could actually demonstrate that to you today, that an Apple Pay device could pay a Halo powered device. So those are two phones touching each other. There's no notion of card in this thing. The cards are completely digital. The payment acceptance is digital and the card itself is digital. So absolutely yes.
Guys, where would you like our viewers to go if they're interested to know more about Halo, you know, and what you guys are doing? Hey, can I get a demo? Hey, I want to, you know, take some cool payments that I've delivered through your technology. What do you want them to do? Yeah,
so I think obviously if you could follow us on LinkedIn and our social media media accounts, and check out our website. We're really updating the website frequently with information about the technology. So we've got great FAQs that explain a lot of these technical questions and try and simplify, what's all going on there. And then, we've got some exciting events coming up over the next few months. We'll be in Amsterdam in June at a Money 2020 conference. We're a sponsor there demonstrating our technology. So we're taking Halo to the world. We'll be in Berlin in July, and then we'll be in Las Vegas in October for a further Money 2020 event. So really exciting to be traveling the world again. I think travel's been limited over the past 2 years. So it's exciting just to get out there and show the world what we've been working on as a South African tech company.
Well, I'm so excited to have you guys here and also to see where you guys are going. We spoke a lot about the future. In fact, this whole series is really about the future with Halo Dot, especially in the payment space. And I'm very excited to see what you guys are going to be doing on the world stage. So congratulations. Thank you to all of you who've been around. My name is Matt Brown signing out, and we'll see you in the final video.